Much like Hudson Hawk, I didn't know that Days of Thunder was a movie until many years later. I just assumed it was a video game for the NES, but unlike Hudson Hawk, which drove a 6-year-old me to tears because it was so frustrating, Days of Thunder was just boring, if anything else. I remember it having the really nifty idea of you getting the opportunity to play the pit crew, but suffice to say, there's a reason that we've never seen this in video games since. It wasn't until many years later, when I was a full-grown adult and I was discovering the majesty of this unique place called YouTube, when I found a game reviewer who went by the name of Urinating Tree. I saw his latest video at the time was a review of Days of Thunder, which I didn't recognize the name of, but when I started looking at the game footage, I suddenly remembered to myself, hey, I remember this game. I played this when I was like 6. Yeah, this is very familiar. And as for the review itself...
Player control pitting. What the fuck were they thinking?!
Nice try, buddy.
Oh yeah, nice try, huh? Well, maybe if my actual pit crew wasn't circle-jerking in the back to naked pictures of Marilyn Monroe and then eating the remains of ice cream, then I may have had a chance of winning! You think this is fun?! You think I'm going around prancing around in the morning noon at some grass field?!
I'm gonna take a shot in the dark and say he wasn't impressed. So I guess the reason I picked this for this week's It Came From Pluto TV was, is this a good movie that just had a really bad video game adaptation, or is this movie genuinely bad? Honestly, the only thing I'd ever heard about this movie was that a lot of people like to call it Top Gun on wheels. And when I heard that, I assumed it was going to be very, how do I say this without getting cancelled, homoerotic. I mean, if shirtless dudes playing volleyball is your thing, I mean, more power to you. Far be it from me to criticize. As it turns out, the nickname Top Gun on Wheels has less to do with, like, any homoeroticism and more to do with the fact that it features Tom Cruise in a very formulaic Tom Cruise movie. Somebody was talking about how Tom Cruise, throughout most of the 80s, had a very cookie-cutter style of movie. And I think I even found a drinking game somewhere where you could actually take a shot every time you encounter the proto-villain, or take a shot when you encounter the, you know, the mentor character, and take a shot if Tom Cruise is the character who has to have his wild spirit tamed, etc., etc. And yes, Days of Thunder does fall victim to this pretty much in spades. But at the same time, it was a genuinely interesting movie, and I actually liked it. I'll be the first to admit that I don't know anything about NASCAR except Jeff Gordon bad, Dale Earnhardt good, and that's basically it. Oh, and the obvious, they're making a left turn! They're making a left turn! They're making a left turn! I wonder what's gonna happen next! And yeah, I know, that's a Jeff Dunham joke, but hey, if it's true, it's true, right? This is one of those movies that goes in knowing full well that, you know, the average Tommy Tealhat over here doesn't know jack shit about NASCAR, and they go out of their way to explain certain aspects of NASCAR culture, like when the cars kind of bump into each other, that's not called ramming, that's not called slamming, that's called rub. And they talk about all the mechanics of the car, like you gotta put tubes here in order to make it go faster while simultaneously not poisoning the driver with exhaust, or how you gotta get the tires changed, you can't do this or else you melt the tires quicker, etc., etc. They go out of their way to explain the jargon, although I'll be honest, I'm probably still a little confused as to what's going on, but at the same time, I'm just more mesmerized by all the high-octane racing. In fact, dare I say it, this might have been the gateway I needed to finally understand why people like NASCAR. Although, if I'm being honest, it kind of looks like a lot of this was, like, embellished a little bit. The cinematography definitely made this whole aspect of auto racing look a lot more cool than it probably is in real life. I honestly still remember trying to watch NASCAR on TV, and I imagine NASCAR is more fun to take part in than it is to watch, at least from a TV perspective. I have seen reviews where people talk about how the dialogue doesn't sound natural, but maybe not to the extent of a space alien wrote this, but at the same time you can clearly tell you're watching a movie, and I guess I can see what they're talking about, but honestly, I've seen way worse than this. I mean, I've seen way worse from Tom Cruise than this. I think the only thing in the movie I didn't like at all, was probably the romance angle between Tom Cruise's character of Colt Trickle and I forget her name, but Nicole Kidman plays her, and honestly, this, if you ever want to talk about the fry, the forced romantic interest, look no further than this, because this was just absolutely the worst example. Like, this right here is the kind of thing that drives me insane when it comes to storytelling and when it comes to plot, and this didn't even need to be in the movie. It contributed nothing, and it just felt like a waste of time, except for maybe that opportunity for Colt Trickle to explain the slingshot theory, where if the guy ahead of you is going 200 miles per hour, he's probably flooring it, but you can ride his tail and not floor it and still go 200 miles an hour based on the fact you're riding his momentum, and when he makes the turn, he'll slingshot you, and when you floor it, you'll be going 400 miles or something. I don't know, that kind of seems dubious to me, but I don't race cars, and I don't know the first thing about it, so for all I know, maybe that's something that actually happens. Overall, I genuinely like this movie. I kind of want to recommend it, but at the same time, I kind of have a feeling this is one of those movies that's going to be a lot more enjoyable if you're into race cars and going vroom, making the left turn and whatnot. But at the same time, I would probably suspect that newbies won't have an especially hard time getting into this movie. I recommend it. 3 hats out of 4. And that's going to do it for this week's edition of It Came from Pluto TV. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please! Until next time.